Hello and welcome to Digital Finance Module 1. My name's Courtney and here I'll be taking you through Part A, the introduction, and also Section 1.1. We're looking at the digital finance landscape, like what's going on in the world, how does it all work? And the key question you have to be asking yourself as you read this study guide is, am I myself going to get automated? Is my role going to disappear? And a huge portion, probably a quarter of accounting jobs are expected to disappear over the next 5 to 10 years. Is that you? Or are you going to be part of the process of implementing change, transforming things as we go along? So those who are skilled up, those who can integrate systems, those who can do deep analytics and analysis, I got caught on that, are the people who will be the accounting and finance professionals of the future, those who can add value to their businesses, to their organizations. So a good example of digital finance and change is coming in example 1.1. And Deloitte, one of the big four, has done a project where they've described this. So we have a leading multinational, so turning over millions and billions of dollars. Great investment in their products, improving quality and efficiency. But this is the key point, rarely taken time to look at their back-end processes, those support processes such as accounting. So they set themselves a target of $30 million in efficiency gain. So we're looking at huge transformation here. And they wanted to go from being a bit sluggish to best in class as part of their finance function. So Deloitte has worked with them, and what have they decided to do? They've called it a lab. So best in class starts with a lab, a finance lab. So the issues they had, lots of manual processes. That's you and me doing accounting work. That's why I say if you get efficient, these jobs will disappear. Are you going to be automated or part of the process of fixing it? Slow and inflexible reporting. So if you need something urgently and you have to wait a week or 2 weeks or it's not clear, that's a problem. Lack of data, it's not being collected, collated, curated, and therefore no insight to help the company achieve its objectives, no analysis and interpretation. So the finance lab doesn't solve the problem, but what the finance lab does is investigate 4 key areas: reporting, insights, efficiency, and then that overarching governance and HR. Step 1 was, during this lab, demonstrate specific technology. So that's very similar to this study guide where it shows you all of these different options which you need to explore further so you can learn how to implement. Then develop the digital initiatives, the projects with that target in mind. How do we save $30 million? And then workshops for finance teams. So skilling up, developing these finance teams so they can understand the technology and implement it. So this is when we talk about transformation, this is what it looks like. Looking at slow back-end processes, transforming them, plugging in new systems, making things efficient. And when you do that, you normally need fewer people. So what does digital finance cover? It includes financial software. There's going to be new products and services in the digital space, but also new communications with our stakeholders, especially our customers, and new types of interaction. So what used to happen 20 years ago is like so far in the past now, it's quite amazing. Even 10 years ago, things have transformed. So we have these fintech companies who are bringing in new innovation. But of course, the banks and the other financial providers who've been around for decades aren't standing still. So they're responding, and they actually have a lot more money, infrastructure, systems, and customers. So it's leading to a huge improvement and development in the financial space. So in Module 1, there's 4 key parts. So in Part A, we look at the landscape, the overall picture of what's going on in the digital ecosystem. And then Module 2, more about how ecosystems work, plug together all the different components. Part C looks at fintech, and then Part D is how do we do change? How do we do transformation? So hints on the idea of good project management and working with people. So there's 3 objectives, and as you work through Module 1, keep these in mind. Objective 1's looking at the complexity of digital transformation, but specifically for accounting and finance professionals. And that's why I asked at the very start, do you think you or your role is going to be automated? Secondly, look at the complexity of practical implementation. So if you want to go and implement these new digital technologies, we saw that in example 1.1, that innovation type hub, that finance hub is going to look at technology, but how do we roll it out through the organization, choosing projects and strategies. Thirdly, how do we support the adoption of those digital technologies? And that's why I talk about that project management mindset. So 20% of your exam is going to be on this module, and that's 15 out of 75 marks. So as you read the module, you should be saying, where can I be evaluated on? What types of questions might I be asked? How would I answer that question? And keep tying it back to these three objectives. So in section 1.1, we look at the technological evolution. What is going on in the digital finance landscape? And we come across the term Industry 4.0. So industry now looks very different to 20 years ago and completely different to 150 years ago. You know, the Industrial Revolution came along and things really started changing. So the network age that combines analytics, AI, and automation. So the Internet of Things. And there's talk of billions of devices all talking and working together, from your camera on your doorbell to your car to your smartphone to your smoke detectors. All of these items are integrated and interconnected. So the Internet of Things, automating things, connecting things that weren't previously available, pushing everything up into the cloud so it's accessible everywhere, and integrating our systems and our businesses so things work seamlessly. So as you may have done this reading, and if not, you may have heard of the 4 V's of big data. So occasionally I'll pop up a question to probe you, but have a look. Which of the following is not one of the 4 V's? Have a moment to think. And what we see is the 4 V's are volume. Volume is, there is a lot of data being created. And with the Internet of Things, as things get integrated, they're expecting to see trillions of new data points every couple of hours is what's going to come along. So the volume of data that exists is extraordinary. Every transaction that happens, every communication, every movement, volume. Variety, this is where things get tricky. Numerical data and count data is easy to capture, collate, report, and analyze. But the variety of data also includes everything typed on social media. So narrative, story, pictures, images, video. That is much harder to search, collate, and combine together. The velocity is that speed, which the Internet of Things is actually accelerating. And this is why this one's highlighted red. The veracity of the data. Not all data is accurate, can be trustworthy. And when we put things in a giant data warehouse or a data lake, not always everything holds true to the right level that we want for deep and meaningful analysis. So what's the 5th value? Some people throw this in value and value creation. So as accountants, we need to be looking at big data, not just to understand it, but how do I use it in my organization? How do I transform things, make better decisions? So a couple of fancy words appear in part A, and I want you to be aware of these and dwell on them a bit. So one is the idea of a network effect or network effects. So when we have a working network, the bigger it grows, the more we participate, the better the returns to scale. So the image I want to use here is going to a rock concert. Now, and Corona's demonstrated this, you can see this in the image at the bottom. If you go to a rock concert and you're all sitting in a seat and there's 10 spaces between all of you, the energy is kind of missing. Part of the joy of going to a concert is being part of a team, a system, a tribe, a network where the energy infuses you. The more people, the more yelling, the more cheering, the more noise, the more fun that you're having. And so that's why listening to something on Spotify versus going to a concert is such a different experience. So network effects work in the same way in industry. And you can think about social media. If 10 people were on Facebook, it wouldn't be that great. But when there's a billion people, the interconnectedness makes it even more powerful. And as you grow, you become more and more powerful as these network effects accumulate. So talking about Facebook, and data being the medium of exchange. That's another key term. So the book talks about network effects, then it says, let's talk about mediums of exchange. What does that mean? Well, why is Facebook free? And my kids will say A. My kids are, you know how they talk about the older generations on Facebook, the newer kids are coming through, whether it's on Instagram or Snap or whatever devices and social media they use. B, you might say it's not free, or C, you're the user of the product is not the customer. So being the user doesn't make you the customer of Facebook. Well, then who is the customer? So the key here is that data is the medium of exchange. Information about you is the product. And in some ways, what Facebook and Google do is not new. They give away things free. Newspapers for many, many years were sold for $1 or $2 each. The actual cost of that newspaper was much, much higher. But the people paying for that were the advertisers. And the people paying for that were the people doing the classified section, selling homes or advertising for jobs or just selling their products. So you bought the newspaper or you paid a small price, but you weren't actually the real customer. The real customer was the advertiser who paid the newspaper owner for access to you, to sell to you. And the most obvious situation here is free-to-air TV. You watch all of this free TV and it's just wonderful. TV comes in and it's delightful. And you think you're a very happy customer, but you are not the customer. The advertiser is the customer who buys advertising time. You are the product, not the customer. So that's how Google works. Google can give you all this search access for free because advertisers pay Google money to advertise to you. You are the product. Facebook, exactly the same. The data that Facebook collects about you is incredibly valuable because it can then profile you. It can then sell you things, or people who want to advertise on the platform can sell to you. So data is the medium of exchange, and that's why Facebook is free. It's not free to the actual customer, the advertiser. You are the product. You are not the customer. So another quiz for you. Digital technologies. Which three of the following are digital technologies that are shaping the future of accounting and finance function? They all look pretty tempting, don't they? So as you look at that, let me take you through these key items. These are the digital technologies shaping the finance function. First of all, automation. That was my very first question to you earlier. And this is where we replace the things done by hand by software. Or if we don't replace them, we complement them. We work side by side. And that's a fantastic thing. Now, automation hasn't just happened in the last decade. If you go back to the 1940s and 50s, people who worked in accounting, for example, were called computers. Their job was to compute. They added things up and they wrote things in columns. We replaced that with software and computers, but it's just accelerating more and more and more. So automation is a key transformational item. Analytics. Not only do we just have people looking at data, but we can run software programs and algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning to find the trends, to find the interesting factors, to put the links together so that we can make better decisions faster. A great example of analytics, not exactly in the business realm, for example, is when we want to look at medical sections, people searching on Google for certain symptoms help medical authorities determine where a virus outbreak is going to happen because it's happening in real time. So analyzing the right data set, who is querying for certain medicine or health issues and diagnosis helps us analyze and determine and make decisions much, much faster. Now, humans can't analyze these broad data sets with billions and billions of searches and everything. So artificial intelligence, automated systems do the analytics for us. So those are the three key digital technologies. The ecosystem, which was that fourth option, is not correct. That's not a technology. It is just the structure of how the system works. Finally, we have the digital mindset. So digital mindset is a concept that helps you do the other three properly. Digital literacy, rethinking how you do business. So instead of saying, we've never done it like that before, you should be saying, how can we do it differently? What is a completely transformational way of doing accounting and finance? And an amazing example of this is sort of mobile banking. And I'll give a more detailed example of that later. But in many countries, people do not have bank accounts. They can't walk up to a bank and open an account and transact in that way. But go back a decade, people found ways to just use their telephones to send money and receive money and pay bills. That is a totally different way of thinking about banking and finance that never used to exist. So a digital mindset with digital literacy helps you solve problems in completely new ways. So what kind of skills do you need? Sorry, I shouldn't smile at this point, but some of the jobs are going to disappear. They're going to be automated. So if you want to move up to that next level, what skills do you need? If you do not have these enabling skills, you are unlikely to have a successful role in senior areas of accounting in the future. So you can't just be technically good at accounting or systems. You can't just have task skills. You need great behavioral skills. Why? because you need to implement change. And that means working with people, systems, budgets, deadlines to successfully implement. And that's part D of Module 1, looks at that transformation and other modules. So do you have communication skills? Humility and patience, agility, that the ability to adapt because the world keeps changing. Don't forget, your competitors are going to be moving as well. The government is going to change the laws and the regulations. There's things like when companies get hacked and held to digital ransom, how are you going to behave? How are you going to protect that from happening? Time management, all of these behavioral skills need to be combined with finance and data analysis skills. So if you're a little bit rusty with your data analysis, sign up for some courses, skill up. You cannot just trundle along the way things used to be. Now, this is a really good article about what does it mean to be at the top of the tree. Do you need to be technically strong, or is it more about relationships? Is it about new tech or new people? And the reality is that things are changing. 65% of respondents in this survey, the CFO of the future type thing, is that standardizing and automating processes is a significant priority. So a lot of money is going to be spent on new technology. But we also got to spend on our people. Nearly half of the people interviewed said that current finance people do not have the right skills. They may not have the behavioral skills or the analytics or the finance skills to be successful. So that goes back to my original question. Are you going to be automated, or are you going to be part of the team that implements the change? So building these skills in predictive and prescriptive analytics is critical. Improving business partnering. These are the types of things that are coming in the future. And the reality is it's not either or. It's not, is it new tech or new people? It's new tech and new people. So we want accountants to adapt and upskill to be successful in this area. So what does a future-ready finance function look like? So one of the things we see here is the idea of a strategic leadership role. So accountants traditionally were back in the dark corners of the business, crunching numbers, bean counting, just producing reports. But we have moved up into a strategic leadership, advisory, business partnering type role. So if we're going to do that, we have to focus on value creation. Now that, I'm tying this back to all the other subjects you've studied. If you've done strategic management accounting, everything throughout that subject is about how do we create value? How do we improve a product, improve a process, or become more efficient so that we can lower our costs? How can we distribute it faster, communicate better to our customers? So creating value. How do we use agile funding models? So this links in a bit with financial risk management, all the sources of debt and sources of equity. Can I get money quickly and easily? In the past, you might have had a great business idea, but no access to capital. Only the big corporates could obtain the funding required to do the projects that were available. Now you see things like Kickstarter and peer-to-peer lending, and these abilities to get hold of funds so rapidly. Now, seeking talent doesn't sound like a finance role, but it is human resources, those people. And I showed you in that survey data, half of the people interviewed say that their team isn't skillful enough to do this work. So Contemporary Business Issues has a whole module devoted to human resources and how do you obtain talent. So do you train up new people? Do you hire engineers and teach them accounting? Or can you teach accountants all these new technical skills? Being the first to adopt is a critical at staying ahead, otherwise you're going to fall behind your competitors. And finally, establishing a digital ecosystem service delivery model. Now, that's not normally covered in most of the CPA program, but in Global Strategy and Leadership, it talks about this ecosystem approach to thinking about organizations. And it's a lot more integrated than a traditional value chain approach. So these are the things you need to dwell on. Now, these are big theoretical ideas, but you can boil them down to tangible things. Do you know how to do analysis? Do you know your finance? Are you good at working with people? Can you roll out projects that implement new technology? Are you up to date with new technology, or are you falling behind? Now, as new CPAs coming through, in one sense, you have a little bit of an opportunity over older CPAs. So people who graduated 20 years ago have a lot less exposure to some of the newer tech that's out there. So you have a good starting point, but if you don't build on that, you will fall behind. So I hope you've enjoyed the introduction to Part A and Section 1.1. It's given you a clearer picture of what to expect as we work through the rest of the materials. Thanks.